What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Ryan CCC 98 Tube. Last week I talked about a couple of different video ideas on my Instagram page. I'd actually had a bunch of you guys vote on it, and it was pretty equal as far as what you guys wanted. Unfortunately, both of those ideas I think are going to take a little bit of a seat on the back burner for a little while, because there was another idea for a video that I thought of that I should probably get out of the way before I got to ship this thing out. So today what we're going to be talking about, and I get this question a lot, is the difference between the 3.0 Alpha Beast. In this particular instance, we're looking at the early alt premium, so it's got a clip, recently refinished by Ben Parley, so thank you for that, and the 1.0 Alpha Beast. Now this one that I have has technically been upgraded to a 2.0, but we'll get into those differences in a second. So, let's switch over to the overhead cam. Sorry, that was a little lame. Alright, here we are once again at the overhead cam. So right away, we can see a couple of pretty distinct differences. Obviously, the clip and this finish is a little bit darker. I don't know if you can tell in the camera, but that's just because it was recently refinished. So it's got more of like a fresh bead blast to it than this one does. This is older, and this one's pretty much almost brand new now. So the clear distinct differences that a lot of people look at are the pivots. So let's take a look at both of those real quick. So as you can see, the 3.0 right here has much larger pivots than the 1.0. Now this is the case for both the 1.0 and the 2.0, and there's really no need for me to even ever do a 2.0 versus 1.0 video. I can tell you right now the differences. The only difference between a 1.0 and a 2.0 is the bushings. So this is technically a 1.0, because in 1.0s they had, I believe it was bronze bushings. It was either bronze or brass. Either way, they were very weak, so they would get super, like, a lot of tap, and they wouldn't really look so good. Well, they looked good, but, like, they wouldn't flip too well. In the 2.0s, they upgraded them to the stainless steel bushings, which now all Alpha Beast variants have. So this one technically is a 1.0 that was upgraded to a 2.0, because now it's got good stainless steel bushings in it. So that's the difference between 1.0 and 2.0. But in these boys, there's, you know, you can see they look extremely similar. Now obviously this is the Scimitar blade version and this is the alt, so that is going to be a pretty large difference anyways. But so that's the initial thing. Another thing to look at is these tank cups. So this is something I wish they had kept throughout the board. On the 1.0s, they're hidden, which kind of, I think, in my opinion, gives it a much cleaner look. You know, not to say that this one doesn't look clean, but it's you know, it's just definitely different. So that is a big difference right there. So another big difference is the spacers, the back spacers. So on the 1.0 and the 2.0 variants, they actually didn't use sex bolts. So these back spacers actually have threading in them, so that way you can put screws in on both sides. See that? So you got screws on that side, screws on that side. And when they went over to the 3.0s is when they started putting sex bolts in, so you only had to screw in on one side, which helps a lot too when you're disassembling these guys a lot, because a big problem that the 1.0s were having was that people were stripping the spacer screws, because it is titanium on here. So, you know, if you're taking your 1.0 apart a lot, you're gonna eventually strip out these spacers, and then you're just kind of shit out of luck unless you can get someone to drill it out and turn them into sex bolt spacers. So I think that's why they switched over on these, which I think was a good call, because people do like to take them apart and mod them and do all that fun stuff with them. So that is another pretty big and clear difference. Now another thing that a lot of people talk about, you'll see in the community, you'll see people will be like, oh, I've got a thick AB or I've got a thin AB or whatever. In this particular 3.0, this was an early one, so these are thins. So if I can line this up here, they're roughly about the same thickness. So like, I think that's why a lot of people at first enjoyed having the thins, because they flipped the most similar to these 1.0s. So the thicks were actually just a hair thicker, which now is a preference. I kind of want to find myself another thick because they were so cool and just a little bit different. BRS claims that there wasn't any difference between thick and thins, but the community begs to differ on that one. So there's definitely a huge difference with those. Another thing is the sound on these are a lot different. So, and it varies between models, but let's just go ahead. We're going to take the 1.0 right now and we're going to throw that into the mic. So that's the 1.0 sound. Now let's get some 3.0 sound. Now I'm being incredibly picky, and I always am with my Bally's, but the 3.0s for me sounds a little bit more of like ringy, and I don't know if that has to do with the tank cups than this one does. Now I also brought myself a nice scale, because if I'm going to be doing reviews for you guys, I want to be able to show you what stuff weighs. So let's zero this baby out. So let's throw the 1.0 on there real fast. So the 1.0 comes in at 4.9 ounces, which honestly, it doesn't feel like 4.9 at all when I'm flipping it. It feels a lot lighter, but I guess that makes sense. And then here is the 3.0, 4.8. So right away, that's a pretty big difference. I mean, not really, but when you think about in terms of, this has a whole clip on it. So if I take this clip off, this is going to become a lot lighter. So in this particular instance, with these earlier thinner models, they actually were lighter than the 1.0s. And I know, like, looking on a scale, that's not a huge difference, but when you're flipping them in person, that's a really big difference. So as far as my preference goes, I have always been a sucker for the 1.0s, just because they flip a lot nicer in my opinion. The only problem with these ones is if you drop them a whole lot on like really hard surfaces, because it's got such small bushing, or not, well, it does have small bushings, but small pivots. I mean, those pivots are literally the same size sex bolts as the bottoms on the 3.0, so you can tell those are really small. Those are really small. So on hard surfaces, they can actually snap, and I have heard about people snapping these pivots, so that can be an issue. And like I said in my last video, they are a lot harder to tune than the 3.0s are. So finding a 3.0 that actually flips good, shout out to Turbo Jackalope one more time, also known as Casey. He really helped me out with tuning this thing to just absolute perfection. So the 1.0s are, if you're like, oh man, I really like the look of this 1.0 a lot more than the 3.0, don't expect it to have good bushings at first, because odds are it's probably not going to. So just keep that in mind if you're going to go out and find yourself one in the community, which eventually I'm going to put up a video on where and how I get my Bally's. And actually, I believe Moisenberg Bally's just posted a video about that, but I'm gonna do my own rendition of how I get mine, and that's one of those burner videos that we'll get to eventually, but I just wanted to do this while I still had the 3.0. So I'm gonna go ahead and move my set around a little bit. We'll get a little bit of some flipping action going with these two boys, and then we'll wrap it up. Alright, so my mic's a little bit further away from me, so I apologize if the audio got a little bit quieter, but that's just how we got to do it in our current set until I can get a shotgun mic. So here's our 1.0. 3.0. Both of these things are incredible flippers. Whichever one you end up going with, you're gonna be happy with it. Like I said, my personal preference is the 1.0, but they're just both beautiful ballys. The alt, compared to the scimitar actually, scimitar, however you guys say it, the alt actually feels a little bit more neutral, and I know that this is a lighter bally anyways. Weirdly, this earlier model with the thinner handles and the alt blade is one of the only ballies I can actually flip and have fun with that has a clip on it. Because usually as soon as I get a bally and I take the clip off, but when I took the clip off this, it just didn't feel right. So it's interesting. You'll find your own little preferences as well when you're looking at certain things, but if you end up getting yourself a thin alt premium, you might end up wanting to keep that clip on there because it actually flips pretty well. Now these never came with clips, so that's you won't have to worry about that. I think if they came with clips, they'd be too heavy anyways. But this is the bally that I learned. I didn't really learn how to flip on it actually, but this was my very first grail, so that's why this one holds a special place in my heart. And forget what his name was on YouTube, but he always flipped them, and he's the guy I learned to flip on. Well, you know, a lot of moves I learned from him, and if I can remember his page, I'm gonna put it down below so you guys can check that out, because he taught me pretty much almost everything I know, except for, like, you know, the exception of some people on Instagram. Alright guys, I think that just about does it for this week's video. I know it's not a super long or in-depth tutorial or anything, but I figured I'd do a little bit of a comparison for everyone, because I know that's been a question on people's minds. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you guys like the 1.0 better? Or are you guys more of 3.0 fans? I know it's got different blade shapes, but try to just kind of look past that and imagine that they both had the same shape. But yeah, let me know in the comments. Do you like the 3.0 or the 1.0 better? And which one are you guys going to go for when you go to buy one? Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Do a like for me, do a subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.